Thank you. Um, it's in education, not Olympics. Unfortunately, when I go to Sri Lanka, or even in the north, I've been going there after 82. Before that, I go there every 2 years. After 82, I was away for a long time. I went back in 94. So I went to as a visiting lecturer to University of Jaffna in the Klinochi campus. But my academic profession was never recognized by anyone. So there's a high jumper. Not only in other parts of Sri Lanka, but also in the north and east. And LTT staff, when I went there, their problem was, why is he here? That was the question. But they got used to me. But still, as a high jumper. So that tag and reputation stayed with me. So when I was appointed as consultant to the Northeast when they were together, it was in sports, not education. But I did education work too. Just a question on that. Professor Boyle referred the LTT operated a de facto administration. Rudra and I used to discuss this, but actually theirs was a de jure administration because Sri Lanka occupied the north and east. Most of you may know, but the younger generation won't know, that in 1948, when the British decided to have the Constitution and independence, we were under the occupation of the British, before that Dutch, and before that Portuguese. So British, when they left, they wanted to put us together. So in the Constitution, there was a section 29. And there was a decision by the Privy Council, Lord Denning, that we were, that section 29 was the covenant under which the Tamils and the Sinhalese joined together. Professor Pires, I'll just quote that only, Professor Pires, he was Minister of Constitutional Affairs under Chandrika. He said, published in the Daily News, a constitutional safeguard was provided for the minorities by Article 29, Section 2 of the Salisbury Constitution. It prevented Parliament from conferring benefits on the majority community and imposing disabilities on the minorities. The Privy Council in Bribery Commissioner versus Ranasinghe had ruled that Article 29(2) cannot be amended even with a 2/3 majority. It was on the basis of this safeguard that the Tamils acquiesced in the granting of independence in 1948. The covenant was broken in 1956 on the Single-Only Act. Then afterwards, in 1970, when they made the Constitution in 1972, Article 29 was left out. And the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka that existed was also left out. The Parliament also left out because they had the Constitutional Council outside the Parliament. So the old Parliament and the old Supreme Court still exist, theoretically. So when the covenant was broken, those who came together went apart. So since 1972, Sri Lanka was occupying the territories that belonged to Eelam Tamils. So when LTT controlled both, it was a de jure government. So now it is still de jure by an occupying force in the north and east. Anyway, as for people to think about, don't put that in my time, please. Education. In 2013, when the Provincial Council was first Provincial Council, the Minister of Education, Mr. Kurukul Raja, whom I have known since '94 when he was Director of Education in Klinachi and Mullaitivu, asked me whether I would facilitate a review of the Northern education system. This is the review. It is accepted by the Ministry of Education and the Sri Lankan government and also the National Education Commission. Some of the recommendations which applies to the whole country is being implemented starting from January of this year. Now, that review has chapters on, one chapter on the whole of Sri Lanka, and the rest of the chapters were about the north. Now, going to you see the names of those people who are not with us anymore. Joseph Parajasingam, Sivaram, Kumar, Jayalat, he was a Sinhalese Minister of Reconstruction, and then Professor Manoharan. Professor Manoharan has a book on the colonization of the East. His topic was on that one. And this is in memory of them. I appreciate all of them, and I have known them very well. Go to the next one. Oh, thank you. This is the website of the Northern Province Education. There's an English version of this book and also a Tamil version. You all can go and look at it if you want more about it. Generally speaking, just to give you an idea of there are 12 zones, or in other countries they'll call it school districts. And then the number of schools, there are some national schools that is funded by the central government directly, then the provincial councils. I just wanted to show you the functioning schools, 1,006. the 1,098 schools were there before. Because of the displacement, they were not able to close some schools. Not close, temporarily closed. Out of the schools that are existing, there are many who are only 50 students or 100 students or 200 students. There are about 50 schools like that. So one has to decide what to do with them. Here's a total number of students, 381,000, almost 385, 82,000. In the eastern province, there are more schools and also more students. Then in the Nagalingam, there are many schools. Altogether, in the Tamil medium schools, there are 3,190 Tamil medium schools in the whole country. So our concern is with them. The Sinhala medium schools are the other one. There are also some English medium schools. One of the problems we have is the whole country too. There are teacher certificates that are students after their 12 or 13 years of study, they go to 2 years of teacher education courses and then go to teach in the primary schools. In the primary schools, you have to teach, a teacher teaches all the subjects. So actually, they are not qualified to teach all subjects. So some of them are also teaching in the secondary schools. Then there's the College of Education, there's 3-year students. And the number of graduates are very small. So that's another problem nationally. This is in the northern province. Here again, teacher certificates in blue. 50% of them are teacher certificate. There are volunteer teachers. They don't have any qualification except they went to secondary school. 8%, those are all political appointments. Premadas has started it. Then all our people also used that opportunity to get votes. They give, where do they go? Go and teach. So it's a dumping ground for political problems. That's another problem we have to deal with. The Northern Province Council does that too. There are 99 school districts or zonal directorate. And if you can look at it, I hope it is big enough. Eastern Province and Banni area, that's the rural areas of the Northern Province, are at the bottom 25 or so. And, but Jaffna is on the 34th position. And Tenmarachi, within the Jaffna zone and Tenmarachi zone, they are in the 67%. All the other zones are below it. So we have a problem of inequality in opportunities for education. We wanted to improve that after the war. How can we catch up with the rest of the country and the rest of the world? So we, in mathematics and science, we went into e-learning. That is, we have DVDs that has all the lessons from covered by the syllabus, the curricula, and distributed to the north and trained the teachers how to use it, and also at the east that we did last year, close to both provinces, close to about 1,000 maths and science teachers who teach in the GCE O level were trained. And then there's a website where these lessons are. Anybody can download it, students, teachers, but we have also distributed it free. Of course, it's all funded by an organization from the Silicon Valley, composed of alumni of the schools. Then eKelvi, which is an organization by Jaffna University graduates in Australia, JUGA, they take it with a small computer just loaded with all these lessons. Where there are no electricity or no internet, they can access it. It's a device, something like an iPad, but $300 or so. But they are going to areas that are no teachers, and sometimes they are teachers but not qualified. But the e-lessons can be, it's a self-learning program. Help them on that professionally, but they do all the financial aspect and organization and administration part of it. Now we come to what you were, Darsha was talking about, militarization and education. They went into CSD, means Civil Security Department. They have established 294 schools, and they have hired 558 teachers, and there are 6,000 students are in these enrolled in schools. Army operates it. So Army is having an education department of their own. Who is to question this? The teachers are paid 30 to 35,000, but the government's preschool teachers are paid 6,000 rupees. And these teachers are trained on other matters. Counterinsurgency used to be what the Army was trained in by Annapolis in the US and other countries. You know, before the end of the war, there was Green Berets training in the South. There are pictures of it. When we raised this matter with them, no, they are not training them. They are training them how not to commit crimes or war crimes. Of course, we did point out to them it didn't work. They don't got teachers. So it's now, like Darsha described, I have come across that. And that's a very serious problem that we have to address. You have to have, it's a Vietnam concept that US taught Army. If you go to the website of there are master's theses on counterinsurgency by armed forces people who went to train there. Their theses are there. So they have now added not counterinsurgency, it's what the US used to call a pacification program. So it's very serious. It has to be addressed by those who are on the ground and those who are outside. Now, coming to the problem that I want it to be solved, the last 2 years I was asked to be a member of the General Committee on Education of the National Education Commission, which is a policy-making body. So one of the points I raised with them was that, I don't know how many of you know, somebody had talked about textbooks, curricula, on history. Now, all subjects, the whole curricula is written in Sinhalese. All textbooks, not just the history textbook, all textbooks are written in Sinhala and then translated into Tamil. Same thing with the examination department. I raised this question in '95 with the National Institute of Education, and after 2 hours of discussion how they can correct this, the Director General at that time, Udugama, who was a Minister of Education under Mrs. Bandaranaike before he was Director General, and to sum it up is that he said, exact words were, these are all political problems. So that means he cannot do anything about it as Director General. After that, in '98, I raised it, couldn't do it. But when I was member of the National Education Commission's committee, I pointed out that they are discriminating by doing this translation, because much is lost on that. And more than that, you only have Tamil translators who know Sinhalese. So when I looked at their website, you can go and look at it yourself, nie.lk, found that the academic staff of the National Institute of Education, there are 220 who does all these curricula and textbooks and teaching materials. Out of that 220, only 20 are Tamils. When I raised this question on paper to the commission as a member, the response was the Director General herself is saying we have 400 part-time Tamil people helping us on this. The question is not part-time members or number of academic staff. Question is, you are doing it in Sinhalese and translating into Tamil. There were 2 members who supported me, who said that has to be, that should stop. Only way to stop is you appoint another 180 as Tamil academic staff to their various departments to write it in Tamil, and the Sinhalese version you write it in Sinhalese, then have a committee together to make sure they are equal. The curricula is the same, the textbook are the same. They refused to accept that recommendation. So then other recommendation was, okay, then establish another Institute of Tamil Medium Education. That everybody said no. Now, before all this, in this book, there's a chapter that the Northern Province Council recommended to establish a Tamil Institute of Education, Tamil Medium, Institute of Tamil Medium Education. This was accepted by the Board of Ministers of the Northern Provincial Council, and it was also accepted by the governor. When the governor signs, is signing it on behalf of the cabinet. Now that was in 2015. Now, to this date, the Northern Provincial Council has not acted on it. I was asked to write a statute because you have to establish an institute by statutes, not just by somebody saying it's an institute. The statutes was translated in Tamil. It was all approved. It is with the Chief Secretary. He's waiting for the new Minister of Education to say, submit it to the Council. Only the Chief Secretary submits to the Council, as Board of Ministers and the Council. Then you can start. Thank you. So, while there is a educational discrimination, I call it institutionalized racism. We ourselves are not instituting so that we can develop our own curricula. Same, but in Tamil. So we developed this body of educators so that they are at a level they can write textbooks, write curricula, write examinations. That we don't have. We have education administrators, but we have no education professionals in the department. So they have subjugated the development of the Tamil people to that level. They are continuing to do so even when appealed. So now time is up. Chapter 4 of the Constitution is about official languages. Under that, they have established an official language commission, and it's here. A citizen or another provincial council can appeal to the official language commission to for the National Institute of Education to appoint equal number of Tamil educators in the academic positions. Our NIE and administrators, there's 0 Tamils. If the commission doesn't, within 30 days, gives the answer, you can appeal to the Supreme Court. This is about the military operator. Now, what can be done? We can appeal. The Northern Provincial can establish the Institute of Tamil Education, or they can appeal to the Commission. But for the United Diaspora can take the problem to their legislators and to the international community. Then these are legal challenges. It costs. But I have identified a non-political, I have approached, and he has agreed, a non-political, they call President's Council. So he has agreed to take the case. We are working on it. He won't charge because he's very rich. He's a citizen of Sri Lanka. I am also a citizen of Sri Lanka, not United States. So, Professor Nataraja, I'm not saying you are less than I am. We are equal. We are all Eelam Tamils. But there are costs involved. So I am filing the case. I'm not waiting for the provincial council to do it. They won't, I know now, unless there's a new provincial council now. But maybe I will challenge them. So here is a chance to test the Chapter 4 of the Constitution, test the people and to expose them to the community how a silent discrimination is taking place against violating the Constitution. Just to sum it up, we need to establish our own institutes. Guru Bharan mentioned about parallel section. We don't need to call it parallel because parallel means you are relating to something else. I don't recognize that something else. So why do you want to call it parallel? You establish your own institution, own organizations, and operate it. In education, almost 90% of the powers are with the provincial councils. They don't exercise it, it is there. What is it that the central government does is that they make sure the curricula is the same, examination is the same, Sinhala medium or Tamil medium, and the textbooks are the same. So we have no powers to write our own textbooks that way we like. But in history, we need to ask. Just to mention to you, I was asked by the National Education Commission to be in the 60-member history curricula Tamil. I said, I'm not a historian. I know Sri Lanka history, but I don't have that discipline. Would you take 2 people from the University of Jaffna who are in that discipline? They said yes, but they had to come on this date. Unfortunately, that date is the convocation ceremony of the University of Jaffna. And Professor Padmanabhan is the chancellor. They refused. I said, when you are ready to meet, you want a Tamil. There are about 60 Sinhalese historians in that committee. I was only one nominated. So I said, take these 2 people and we'll make sure that the history is written in the textbook the way the facts are given. And for your information, you may know it, the history is only up to 1978. After 1978, schools are not taught what the history is. We can teach that history in the schools without the permission of the National Education people, or MOE, but it won't be in the O-level tests or A-level test. Anyway, thank you very much for the extra time.